About the article. A double dissociation between two psychotic phenotypes. Periodic catatonia and cataphasia.
Hello. Thanks for joining us. Do you believe that schizophrenia is a disease? No, schizophrenia is a norm. It has been enacted by consensus using different definitions depending of the classification system in use, ICD-10 or DSM-5. These are defined at the level of the symptoms. And the important point here is the reliability of the concept. Is this a problem? Well, not until you're using it for factual or applied medicine, such as counting the number of patients fulfilling the definition. This is what we call evidence-based medicine. However, schizophrenia does not appear to be a relevant concept for scientific medicine, and is not suitable for that purpose. What is the problem with scientific medicine? Scientific medicine is part of natural sciences. It means that it aims to describe objects that are not only created in our minds, but that also exist in the natural world. We could speak of natural objects. And diseases are natural objects. Diseases are not described by their symptoms, as the disorders, but by their causes. And causes can be defined at the level of the dysfunction of a physiological process, or at the level of what's the root cause of this dysfunction. The former is called the pathophysiology, and the latter, the etiology of a disease. In scientific medicine, validity tells how far our description, that is our model of the etiopathological dysfunction, matches what occurs in nature. The problem is that there is no causal definition of schizophrenia. So how to move on? Well, most researchers are so disappointed about clinical psychiatry that they don't believe that we have appropriate phenotypes to work with. This is why alternatives are emerging, such as dimensional approaches or constructional approaches. Example of this are the research domain criterias, or RDocs, and the systems neuroscience of psychosis, or synopsis. We don't share this mistrust and believe that phenotypes suitable for scientific investigation have been described. We focus on two of them described by the Wernicke-Kleist-Leonhard pathway. Periodic catatonia and cataphasia were chosen because they are sufficiently frequent, and because their phenotypic description has been well optimized. What are they? As stated by the Greek kata prefix, they correspond to the deterioration of a core process, motor processing for catatonia and language processing for cataphasia. Both have a bipolar psychotic phenomenology and have a relapsing progressive course, meaning that acute psychotic phases leave a trail of an increasing amount of residual symptoms. These residuals are specific. Apathy is the leading symptom of periodic catatonia, and thought and language disorganization the ones of cataphasia. How to test which model is the most valid between a unitary schizophrenia and these two phenotypes? To answer the question, we selected patients having a double diagnosis, either of schizophrenia and periodic catatonia, or patient having schizophrenia and cataphasia. Considering that mental diseases are brain diseases, we looked at brain activity. We used arterial spin labeling, a magnetic resonance imaging method which allowed to get an absolute measure of cerebral blood flow or rCBF. We hypothesized that if schizophrenia was a valid entity, we would mostly find differences when contrasting the patients versus the controls. That is, whatever the phenotype, the anomalies would remain the same relative to the control group. This is a conjunction between two statistics, periodic catatonia versus controls and cataphasia versus controls. Conversely, if the phenotypes have some natural foundations, then we would expect them to have specific anomalies in brain activity. That is, anomalies that not only distinguish periodic catatonia to controls, but also to cataphasia. And reversely, anomalies that not only distinguish cataphasia to controls, but also to periodic catatonia. This is what is called a double dissociation. What are the results? Being schizophrenic comes with an increase of rCBF in the left striatum, here in green on the brain sections. Considering that anti-psychotics are responsible for an increase in rCBF in the striatum, it is highly probable that this difference has nothing to do with the natural foundations of schizophrenia, but more to do with the fact that the patients were medicated. Considering our alternative hypothesis, periodic catatonia comes with an increase in rCBF in the left motor and premotor regions, both relative to controls in cataphasic patients, here in red. Since both phenotypes are treated with similar doses of antipsychotics, this time, medication cannot account for this difference. Conversely, cataphasia comes with a selective decrease in rCBF in the temporo-parietal junction bilaterally, here in blue. This decrease is correlated with the thought and language impairment. To summarize, we have here a clear-cut double dissociation, not only because the changes are just the opposite, an increase in periodic catatonia and a decrease in cataphasia, but also, the regions are not the same and are known to support the core symptoms of each phenotype, motor regions for periodic catatonia, and language regions for cataphasia. These observations not only support the natural foundation of periodic catatonia and cataphasia, but also suggest some selective pathophysiology. Thank you for watching.